Logistics planning process as an element of Logistics 4.0. Outline. 1. Introduction. 2. Research area. 3. Logistics planning method. 4. Logistics planning practical research. 5. Conclusion. Introduction. Logistics 4.0 defines the direction of development of the modern supply chain, which requires a properly conducted planning process. In principle, such process is characterized by the following features. The process has a defined goal. The process has a specific course. The process has a specific result. The process is managed by the planning team with specific competences, authorizations, and qualifications. The process is being under management and efforts of the planning team are subordinated to the achievement of the goal of synergy. The result of the planning process is the result of synergistic actions aimed at establishing meaningful relations in the management of resources accumulated in the supply chain. Introduction. According to the conception of Logistics 4.0, such process is identified as logistic planning, which is the result of an engineering approach to solving the problems of production, warehouse logistics, and issues associated with the implementation of transport. It is in the planning process that key decisions are made regarding all processes, including the supply, production, and distribution phases. Logistic planning includes elements of the design process oriented towards its effectiveness and economic efficiency. It encourages managers to search for reserves that improve efficiency in relation to the entire logistics system while maintaining a high level of quality and repeatability. In practical terms, logistic planning is a complex process requiring the usage of specialized software. The aim of this publication is to present the issue of logistic planning in terms of the Logistics 4.0 concept, along with computer applications dedicated for use in the process. Research area. The logistic planning process, which is directed at increasing the efficiency in the area of supply chain management, refers to strategic and operational planning as well as operational and corrective actions. Strategic planning includes accounting of profit and loss, logistic costs account, and sales forecasts. On the other hand, in operational planning, the following elements are important: infrastructure, logistic resources, processes, schedules, sales plans, production capacity, use of logistic resources. Whereas operational activities refer to financial and operational controlling, corrective actions refer to variants and scenarios adopted for the catalog of corrective actions and extraordinary events. Therefore, in terms of activities undertaken in the area of logistic planning, it is necessary to identify relevant research areas. Logistic planning method. Logistic planning is an organized process covering all activities in the enterprise related to planning future activities and making economic, business, and operational decisions. An important step in this process is the adoption of an appropriate method that will enable the implementation of activities planned by the company in the area of logistics, production, storage, and transport. In economic practice, many methods of logistic planning are used, which are very often specialized for strictly defined activities in the enterprise. Thus, these methods are characterized by high labor consumption and an undefined level of effectiveness and efficiency. Logistic planning method. Taking into account the market demand for logistic planning, the PL9A logistic planning method was developed. This method defines 6 sets of information relevant to the implementation of the logistic planning process. ORLC, mapping of a real logistic chain. DP, mapping of planning data, ZL, mapping of a logistic task, IL, mapping of the elements of logistics infrastructure, KL, mapping of logistics costs, PL, mapping of the logistic plan. Logistic planning method. The first set, ORLC, is a representation of a real logistic chain in the analyzed company. In this set, logistic objects are an important element which should be described taking into account information about the actual capacity of logistic objects, the amount of investment outlays, and logistics costs. The second set, DP, is a mapping of planning data relevant to a given logistics system. This set refers to the set of logistic objects, the mapping of the goods rotation cycle in the logistic facility, the mapping of goods delivered to the logistic facility, the mapping of the warehouse stock. Logistic planning method. The first set, ZL, is a mapping of a logistic task for which the value of the stream of goods flowing through the logistic object for the supply phase is important, the value of the flow of goods flowing through the logistic object for the production phase, the value of the flow of goods flowing through the logistic object for the distribution phase. The fourth set, IL, includes mapping of elements of the logistics infrastructure planned to be used at the stage of logistic task implementation, i.e., buildings and structures, warehouse equipment, equipment supporting transport and control processes, means of transport planned to be used at the stage of logistics task implementation, capital expenditures assigned to elements of logistics infrastructure, elements of logistics infrastructure in terms of their productivity. Logistic planning method. The fifth set, KL, is a mapping of the logistic costs account to which the following costs were assigned in the PL9A logistic planning method. Personnel costs for logistics processes included in the logistics plan and responsible for the implementation of the logistics task. Costs of depreciation of infrastructure elements planned for use in logistics processes intended for the implementation of a logistics plan that corresponds to a given logistics task. Energy costs planned for use in logistics processes included in the logistics plan for a given logistics task. Costs of materials that will be used in the logistics processes included in the logistics plan and provided for the implementation of a given logistics task. Costs incurred at the stage of implementation of logistics processes included in the logistics plan and corresponding to the implemented logistics task. Financial costs necessary to ensure financial liquidity for the implementation of logistics processes included in the logistics plan and corresponding to the performance of the planned logistics task. Logistic planning method. The sixth set, PL, is a mapping of the logistic plan where the capacity of logistics facilities in the analyzed logistics chain, investment expenditures adjusted to the logistic facilities in the analyzed logistic chain, logistics costs adjusted to the logistics facilities in the analyzed logistics chain. Logistic planning practical research. In terms of the Logistic 4.0 concept, logistic planning is carried out with the aid of specialized planning software. The developed tools support the implementation of individual processes identified in a given logistic plan. Another tool supporting the logistic planning process is the proprietary LOGPLANNER software, which in principle enables the implementation of the logistic planning process, taking into account the 9A logistic audit and the PL9A logistic planning method. Thus, it allows for the implementation of simulation tests taking into account various parameters, i.e. the period of warehouse stock rotation, change in the size of the load unit, change in the type of transport equipment, labor system type, number of shifts, work time, size of the stream of goods per unit of time. Logistic planning practical research. The structure of the Log Planner application is based on a 9-module system that has been selected to enable comprehensive support for the implementation and course of the logistic planning process. The arrangement of these modules is as follows. Module 1 Parametric Data. Module 2 Logistics System. Module 3 Organization of Logistics. Module 4 Stream of Goods. Module 5 Logistic Resources Modeling. Module 6 Capital Expenditures. Module 7 Account of Logistics Costs. Module 8 Assessment based on Indicators. Module 9 Results and Planning Conclusions. Logistic planning practical research. The modules have been arranged in an open structure which maps the planning process and ensures the possibility of mapping the logistics system as a part of an integrated logistics chain or the process-separated organizational units identified as planning objects. The planning object is a process-organized enterprise for which reference values can be identified, determined, separated, and measured by characterizing them in 3 phases, i.e. the supply phase, the production phase, and the distribution phase. When implementing logistic planning processes using the Log Planner application, 2 scenarios are assumed, i.e. the baseline scenario PL0 and the balanced plan scenario PL1. Logistic planning practical research. In the research process, it was assumed that the logistic planning process would cover a multi-branch enterprise in which 8 logistic facilities were identified, from 1 to 8. The baseline scenario and the balanced plan scenario were identified in the logistic planning process, taking into account the structure of the enterprise. In the study, the planning process excluded production processes, handling complaints and returns, as well as inter-zonal transfers in the enterprise. The logistic planning process was carried out using the PL9A method in Log Planner application. Logistic planning practical research. Example of the results of the planning process taking into account the criterion of logistics cost and the criterion of the inventory turnover cycle are presented in table number 1. Conclusion. The literature research indicated the existence of a need to develop a logistic planning method that would holistically reflect the complexity of the planning process in terms of the Logistic 4.0 concept. The PL9A method of logistic planning presented in the article enables the implementation of the planning process in this approach. It is important that the PL9A method is based on 6 sets in which the elements of the logistic planning process are defined, which enables the implementation of the planning process in production and logistics companies. The implementation of the PL9A method has been developed in the Log Planner computer application, which is an instrument useful in the logistic planning process. Thank you for your attention.